Get me Will Trent.
ABC Tonight.
I don't even know where he is.
Will Trent is back.
You thought you could hide forever? Time to come home.
The series that's being called one of the best network procedurals.
We're going to solve this case.
Featuring new cast member Gina Rodriguez.
I'm a prosecutor. We deal in truth and facts.
Maybe everybody should try that, huh?
Will Trent, the 2-part season premiere, begins tonight on ABC and stream on Hulu.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the individuals participating in the show. All persons described or mentioned in the podcast should be considered innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. This podcast contains subject matter such as violence and graphic descriptions along with adult language, which may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
In March 1956, in White Sands, New Mexico, 2 military personnel are dispatched to find the remnants of a detonated rocket. While there, something extremely strange happens. They separate, and the other hears a terrifying scream. When he locates his partner, he sees one of the most terrifying things one could imagine. You're listening to the Mysterious Brews podcast, and tonight we bring the case of Sergeant Lovette.
Welcome to a deep, dark, dank, moist basement somewhere in the bowels of Georgia. Well, Coach, welcome to 2025. You may be getting the old S word first week back.
What's the old S word?
Snow day!
Oh, snow. No 2 words greater in the English language put together than snow day. I can't name 2 better.
I could, but not on this.
Free bourbon.
Well, you're getting warmer.
Bar.
You're getting warmer.
Open bar and snow day are right up there with each other.
I do like a good open bar. I do look at those 2 words like, boys, y'all don't know who you just told that to.
Yeah. It's like, you sure about that? You sure about that? You sure about that?
Yeah. All right, so.
Well, say it.
Nope.
Say it.
No, it ain't happening.
Don't text it to me.
Ain't happening. My mother listens to this episode, so you keep your filthy mouth shut, sir.
I'm going to tell the world it starts with a B and the other one starts with a J. You put your mind where you want. My future mother-in-law listens to this, too. That's why I wanted you to say it, not me.
All right, so changing gears, taking a hard left turn here. We do have some new patrons over the break. We welcome Haley Moffitt. If you're still with us, there's some weird stuff going on. So, Haley, if you're out there, you got your name read. Hopefully, you're still a patron. We got the man, the myth, the legend, just Matt at the sticker tier. And I believe he is only a patron because Notre Dame beat Georgia.
Beat that ass.
Yeah, they did. And then one Sterla Snorrison.
Sterla Snorrison.
Yep. All at the sticker tier. Sticker tiers. Hopefully we'll get your stickers out in the mail. My local post office is horse doo-doo because I have to go to another town to mail things if I want them to get there in a timely manner or if they ever get there. So, we tried to mail a Christmas gift card to my nephew in Oklahoma, and it took 14 days to get there.
That's a long time.
Yeah, it is. So you, sir, have a 5-star, I do believe.
I do. Got it on Christmas Day. It's a very good Christmas present for us. Well, Alikmas. 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 Great podcast. 5 stars. Couple good old boys talking about my favorite subject. Love you guys. We'll take it. Hell yeah, we'll take it.
I don't know if I talked about this or not, but if any of you watch the Lost Monster Files on Discovery Channel, the main person, Brittany, she goes by Britt. She has a Instagram page, and so we as a podcast started following her because I've just basically given up on my personal Patreon or Instagram page. So I was following.
Why'd you give up on it?
Because it's just too much to keep up with the personal and the podcast, so I just go through the podcast. But anyway,
that sucks, man. Just damn.
It's okay. I don't have many friends, so they're not gonna miss me. But anyway, so we, as a podcast, started following her on Instagram, and then I was doing it just to keep up with when the new episodes would drop, and she has some cool drawings that she makes. She also does a lot of cryptid stuff, so it's a cool page. If you're not following her, do so. And then I don't think...
So for some of the podcast listeners that may or may not have been paying attention at the time, what's her name again?
That's what I'm looking for. Britt _investigates is the page name. And like right before Thanksgiving, she started following us back. So I was fangirling hard, and she said that she had listened to an episode and keeps up with our page, and she loves it.
Nice.
Look at there.
Hey, speaking of beating that ass, you okay about Notre Dame whooping up on?
I am. I was, and here's the thing. And a lot of people laugh at this, but that's fine. Winning an SEC championship, the way the SEC was divided up before this year was that's a big deal. And then the way it was done this year was even a bigger deal. Georgia backed into the SEC championship. I understand that. But they won, beat Texas twice. That's a huge accomplishment. And also, as a Georgia fan, I didn't have a whole lot of confidence after the Alabama loss, to be honest with you. They just seemed off in certain areas. Like they just couldn't get it together. It wasn't the same Georgia team, but here's what's stupid. There's a lot of Georgia fans out there that have gotten way too accustomed to not losing. And you just can't do that in college football anymore. They're going to lose games.
I know, right? Who does Georgia think they are? Bama fans?
Yeah, no shit.
They expect not to lose.
I will say this: the senior class that just that will graduate is 52-5 as a class, and 3 of those 5 losses came this year. I mean, that's a hell of an accomplishment.
That's not too bad.
No, and so going into the Notre Dame game,
at home, never lost at home,
25 game winning streak at home. Going into the Notre Dame game, I thought that it was going to be a big deal for the backup quarterback, but he looked great. The problem was the left tackle should have just wrote a check to that damn defensive end because he had his ass handed to him all night long. He about got the backup killed.
Dude, and then the drop balls, man.
That's been a thing all year. I mean,
I know it has.
And there's no clear-cut wide receiver one. They're missing McConkey. They're missing Bowers. There's nobody that you can just throw it to, and they're just going to vacuum it up. So, again, they won an SEC championship. I'm excited for them. I think there's going to be some changes.
Tearing it up in the pros, bro.
Oh, yeah. Both of them are.
Yeah. But anyway, I'm going to say this. I know we're not a football podcast, but I've been hearing such criticism about the playoff. And, yes, they do need to redo how they seed it for sure. But, man, it's been awesome. Like, give everybody a chance. 2 teams was bullshit. 4 teams was better, but it's still bullshit. I think they need to go to at least 16 teams. But the simple fact that all 4 top seeds lost in the quarterfinals lets you know just how close college football is getting.
It is. There's continuity across the board. And then, for Arizona State to come back the way they did, I agree with you. There should be it should be a 16 team. Here's what I don't understand. You can do this. It has been done in the championship series for many a years. They are seeded.
32 teams.
I know.
32.
I mean, it's not that difficult, guys.
No, it's not.
There's a blueprint already out there. I will tell you this, and like you said, we're not a sports podcast. Something's got to give with NIL and transfer portal, man. They've got to do something. They've got to come down with either capping NIL money at a certain amount, and they have got to come up with this transfer thing. Like if we are giving you a scholarship for your education, you get one shot, you get one transfer. However, that transfer has to come after your freshman year.
Yeah.
And then you're done. if you want to transfer again, you can enter the portal, but it goes back to the way it was. You got to sit out a year.
I would agree with that.
There's somebody that just entered his fourth school in 4 years. He went somewhere, Auburn, South Carolina, now Wake Forest.
Yeah, that's kind of wild.
Yeah. But anyway, all right, so that's enough of that. That takes care of all.
My question is, I mean, I don't know how it is for athletes, but like some of my closest friends I made in my college years, you know, if you're only on campus for 1 year, you're not making any connections. Not like you might want to or need to because you're going to be a pro athlete. You're going to have bloodsuckers everywhere trying to take your monies.
Well, the best quote I've ever heard came about this, especially when it comes to tier one programs, and Tennessee, Alabama, basically the SEC top teams. Some of these kids have to understand, are you willing to put in the work while you wait for your position to come open, for your opportunity? If you're not willing to work, they don't really need you.
Yeah.
You know, it is what it is. If you think you can go somewhere else and you can have a shot, you can exceed at whatever you want, then go right ahead. But anyway, that's enough of that. I'll get off my soapbox. We can go ahead and get this out of the way. Coach and one Chuck Ball from Arkansas recommended the Kings of Tupelo.
Yeah, that was going to be my recommendation, man. We can't do recommendations now.
No, we're going to do it now, brother, because
it's that good, though. It's that good.
Yeah, it is. If y'all like Tiger King, buckle up.
The best part is the fact that you didn't look at the preview and know nothing about it. You just started watching it. That's the best way to do it. If you've never heard of this, do not go watch the preview, on the trailer on Netflix or none of that to see if you might like it. If you like true crime and just wild ass stories, just watch it. It is insane. The fiance and I did not stop watching it. We watched all 3 episodes back to back to back, and I don't even think I got up to pee, which is odd because I pee like 75 times a day.
Well, I'm going to say me and the wife watched episode 1. I think we paused it 3 times, and I was like, what in the hell are we watching?
Yeah, you might have to pause it to try to, figure out what the hell you're watching.
But, yeah, that's going to be the dual recommendation. You get one tonight.
Yeah, it's that strong.
All right, so let's do this thing. We are talking about one crazy story that leads into another crazy story, and Coach doesn't even know about the second crazy story. But
no surprise there.
Yeah. We are going to start this wonderful episode off in 2025 with the case of one Jonathan Lovette.
Okay, let me say something I wanted to say when I heard his name. There's a private school in Georgia called Lovette, the Lovette School. And they got a really good wrestling team, and I've coached against them many, many times. But I thought I had the greatest slogan for their school. And I would tell their wrestling coach every time I saw him, and he'd be like, nah, we're not going to be doing that. And I was like, dude, you got to. It's amazing. I said, all you got to do is have Love It on the front, and then on the back you just put, or leave it.
I agree with you.
I thought it was amazing.
It's a hell of a business plan.
I was like, hell, I'll buy one right now.
Amen. I don't even like private schools, and I'll buy one. All right, so little backstory here. White Sands Missile Range is the largest military testing site in the continental United States. It is located in southern New Mexico and was established in the early 1940s. It has steadily expanded since its inception to cover an area of 3,200 square miles encompassing parts of 5 separate counties. It's a big tract of land, sir.
Yeah, it is.
During the old WW2, that's World War II for you uneducated folks, it played an integral role in the development of America's early nuclear weapons program, with the world's first live nuclear bomb test taking place in July 1945. White Sands was also the main location for America's post-World War II rocket technology experiments, housing most, if not all, of the German scientists and the V-2 missile components under Project Paperclip.
I'm gonna interrupt real quick. I don't mean to, but I've got to because it's making me giggle as I think about it. So on our last episode, when you were talking about that whatever creature with the 30 heads, did you listen back to it?
Nope.
Well, I don't know if it's the same on every podcast, but on the Apple podcast, you said, well, she got her tits all out akimbo, and as soon as you said that, it cuts to a commercial, and I just thought that was the funniest thing.
That's awesome.
It's like, she's naked from the top up. She's got her breasts all akimbo, and then it's like, hello, Fresh. Excuse me, sir. We don't do that here.
Yeah, you keep your little paws to yourself.
I apologize, but for the first time ever, this little son of a bitch trying to hump my leg.
Uh-oh. Getting a little frisky.
We got you fixed for a reason, pal.
He's just expressing his dominance there, Slappy.
Well, he about to get kicked in his dominant nose.
So White Sands was also the main location, like I said, for all the bits and pieces.
What?
I said White Sands.
We're talking about my dog humping my leg.
No, we're trying to get away from that.
Me too. That's what I'm dealing with. Don't just ignore me and go straight back to the case. People want to know
that you're being humped unprovoked.
Yeah, unwantedly.
Please.
Hashtag me too. Go somewhere else. Yeah, get your tail, you dummy.
All right, so White Sands also is a hotspot for an unusually high number of UFO sightings in the region, with a lot of conspiracy theorists speculating that some of the sightings are our own Earth-based UFOs, or UAPs, as the kids say these days.
Yeah, we're not the cool kids. We're going to stick with UFOs.
Yeah. New Mexico possesses one of the highest concentrations of reported UFO cases in the United States, including the creme de la creme, the infamous Roswell crash of 1947, as well as the Socorro encounter in 1964. We have yet to cover that one. So the United States Air Force bases in the area have also seen a plethora of sightings, with a number of UFO incidents having been reported in and around the Kirkland Air Force Base in Albuquerque. During the 1950s, observers of the missile test conducted stated that the facility would regularly report strange objects in the skies nearby, apparently tracking the progress of the weapons as they had been launched. This led to the further speculation that the technology being applied to the testing was not solely the results of just German scientists in the missile program, but that they had also incorporated science and technology that had been recovered from the Roswell crash site. The high levels of security and obvious clandestine involvement of the CIA has also served to further fuel these conspiracy theories. Tonight we are going to discuss one of the most peculiar cases that has ever leaked to the public in the early 1960s.
And if it's true, it's crazy.
Yeah, I would have considered myself pretty well versed in the area of UFO crashes, incidents, things like that, but I'd never heard of this one.
Me neither.
So one cold morning in March 1956, a search party consisting of 2 airmen was dispatched to a field situated south of the main White Sands testing area to locate any debris that may or may not have fallen from a missile test carried out the previous evening. The men in question were one Major William Cunningham and Sergeant Jonathan Lovette. Both were attached to the Air Force Missile Command Station at Holloman Air Force Base in nearby Alamogordo. The 2 men arrived at the location approximately at 3 a.m. Climbing out of their Jeep with flashlights in hand, they hiked unenthusiastically into the designated clandestine search zone. It was a mission they had both performed many times before, resulting in varying degrees of success and severe monotony. After a couple of minutes of walking together, the 2 men separated. Major Cunningham continued to walk in a straight line while Sergeant Lovette headed over a nearby sand dune. The sergeant did not tell the major where he was going, and when Major Cunningham saw Lovette disappear over the dune, he figured he needed to answer the call of nature. When Sergeant Lovette had still not returned several minutes later, Major Cunningham stopped what he was doing and returned to where he and the sergeant had separated. It was at this point he heard something that chilled him to the bone. Sergeant Lovette had let out a high-pitched, guttural scream that shattered the stillness of the night. It was a cry of agony which reverberated into the dark and empty desert. Fully aware that Lovette was in some sort of trouble, the major assumed that the good sergeant had been bitten by a snake or attacked by some other desert animal. Major Cunningham raced over the top of the sand dune, and what he saw was an unbelievable sight. About 30 feet from where he was standing, lit by the dim beam of his flashlight, the major could make out a metallic disc hovering approximately 15 to 20 feet above the ground. It was completely silent and did not look like any vehicle or piece of military hardware that he had ever seen before. Just then he caught something moving around at the base of the object, writhing and flexing back and forth like a snake. When Major Cunningham moved his flashlight to this object or thing, he could see it was a thick metallic cable of some sort, and just then he heard another terrible scream that snapped him out of his dazed and confused stupor. Moving his flashlight to the end of the cable, he was shocked and horrified to see that it was wrapped around one of Sergeant Lovette's legs. The sergeant was fighting with everything he had, kicking out and clawing with his hands in a desperate attempt to get free from the thick metal cable. Lovette's efforts seemed futile, and as Major Cunningham was assessing the situation, the cable retracted at a blinding speed, dragging Lovette along the ground and then up towards the base of the disc. Frozen in disbelief and terror, Major Cunningham watched helplessly as Lovette was pulled up into the base of the hovering craft. Major Cunningham and Sergeant Lovette's eyes met for a second as Lovette continued to desperately plead for help before he disappeared from sight. As he disappeared, there was at the same time a clicking sound, or a single click sound, and then the disc silently shot up into the dark sky.
Yeah, basically it's the sound of the door closing, I would assume.
That's what I'm thinking. Struggling to wrap his head around what he had just witnessed, Major Cunningham ran, tripped, stumbled, whatever you want to call it, back to the Jeep, grabbed the radio, and yelled into it that Sergeant Lovette had been taken and that an aircraft was leaving the scene. Within minutes, every available Air Force unit and resource was screaming towards Major Cunningham's location. All they found when they arrived was the major in the fetal position next to the Jeep, rocking back and forth in shock. There was no sign of Sergeant Jonathan Lovette. In the following days, airmen combed every inch of ground in the vicinity of the abduction site, but it was all to no avail. It was confirmed by staff on duty at the site control tower on the evening of the incident that an unidentified radar contact had shown up on their instruments, but had been moving too fast for any possible action to be taken against it. Poor Major Cunningham was interrogated ad nauseum for 3 days, and on the 4th day, news came in that a search party, searching approximately 10 miles from where Lovette had disappeared, had discovered the sergeant's body, or at least what was left of it. So, warning, if you are weak-stomached or you let your children listen to our episodes, I want to express to you in no certain terms, we are about to describe something that is horrific. I personally would not let my children listen to this description, so you have been warned.
Bro, your kid's like 24.
Well,
you can listen to it now.
He's only 19, but he's still, I don't know, man. I wouldn't let anybody under the age of 14 listen to it, that's for sure.
There you go.
All right, so here we go, boys and girls. Buckle up, because like I said, this is not pretty. Sergeant Lovette's remains had been horrifically mutilated in a manner that nobody involved in the investigation had ever encountered before. A neat and considerable incision had been made from the tip of Lovette's jaw right around to the back of his larynx. The sergeant's tongue and eyes, as well as a significant portion of jawbone, was missing. His penis had been removed, and the anus had been completely cored out, seemingly with exemplary surgical skill. The coroner's report also noted that there was no trace of vascular collapse or organ failure anywhere in the body, which was baffling because there was not a single trace of blood left anywhere inside Sergeant Lovette. Other abnormalities were found in the report submitted by the officers investigating the incident. At the location where the remains had been found, a number of predatory birds were also found dead, having apparently died after attempting to feed on Sergeant Lovette's corpse. The body was also in surprisingly good condition despite having been out in the desert in one of the harshest and hottest environments the U.S. has.
But it was March, though.
I don't give a shit. All right, so...
I'm just saying.
Okay, so
Yes,
instead of 112, it was only 103 that day.
You... I'm just saying.
It is. I will give you it was springtime in the desert, but we know how cold it gets in the desert and how hot it gets. You would expect that to, I guess, rapidly intensify the decomp, but that's not what they found. So, with his body recovered, Major Cunningham was arrested and charged with murder. Case was presented.
You would think. You would assume. I mean, when you hear hoofs, you don't think zebras, you think horses, you know?
Yeah.
That's going to be the most likely thing is he murdered him. Yeah, do that. Don't mute yourself. That'd be ridiculous.
Oh, good God, that hurt.
Just sneeze directly into the...
And shatter everyone's eardrums. The case was presented to a military tribunal with prosecutors alleging that Major Cunningham had murdered Sergeant Lovette, faked the abduction story, mutilated the body in an effort to make the lies that he was telling more convincing. However, there were some level-headed people on the old tribunal, and naturally it took little time for them to reject this argument. Major Cunningham was released without charge and allowed to retire from the Air Force a short time later. To this day, Jonathan Lovette's death remains completely unexplained. Now, as we have learned from previous stories, the U.S. government has maintained a firm and long-standing policy of not publicly commenting on alleged encounters between members of their armed forces and the UFOs. From the Foo Fighters experienced over mainland Europe during World War II and the wild sighting at Rendlesham Forest in the 1980s, time and time again, the Pentagon refuses to talk about the possible existence of extraterrestrial life. In the case of the New Mexico sightings, the government may have had even more reason to remain silent on the story, wanting to preserve the secrecy and security around what was going on at some of their most valuable military facilities. The lack of any other reasonable or credible explanation for what happened to Sergeant Lovette and the similarity to this case to another alleged close encounter, their silence has fueled speculations about the cases. Incidents involving animal and livestock mutilations have been reported from around the world for decades. The phenomenon seemed to reach its peak during the mid-1970s. While the cases being reported have dropped from the public's eye, they are still taking place with frustrating and fascinating regularity. In the 1990s, several farms in Vancouver reported that their livestock had been attacked and disfigured by unknown assailants. Witnesses reported hearing an odd humming noise in the sky around the time of the incidents, and one farmer alleged to have seen a small humanoid figure fleeing the scene holding a device in its hand.
Yeah, I'd sell the farm.
Yeah.
I'd be gizon.
Cases have also been reported in Wales and the English county of Shropshire. Now, alleged attacks on human victims are few and far between, because I had never heard of them until this case, because they're a hell of a lot more disturbing than somebody or something dissecting some cows. In 1979, two deer hunters in the Jerome area of Idaho, and that is south central Idaho, stumbled across the naked body of a mutilated male victim. His lips and sexual organs were missing. His personal effects were finally located several miles away, seemingly discarded in the middle of a field. The official police investigation into the matter concluded the victim was a vagrant who died from, quote, a drunken misadventure and whose remains had been interfered with by animals after his death, end quote.
Drunken misadventure.
Yeah. I've had several of those, but I didn't wake up without my innards.
That's true.
Now, this explanation did not sit too well with the public and especially the two hunters who discovered his remains. Going back to the White Sands case, Major Cunningham was a highly trained and respected officer attached to one of the country's most sensitive military projects. What reason would there have been for him to throw his entire career away by making up a story about an alien abduction? If he was involved in Lovette's death, what could possibly have driven him to carry out such an attack on his subordinate? Also, where did he acquire the skills to perform such surgical feats? Why has he not reoffended since this incident?
And he wouldn't have had the time to do it.
No.
That's the thing.
Well,
He would not have had time to surgically remove all that stuff. It's kind of ridiculous.
It's crystal clear that Major Cunningham had no part in the death of Sergeant Lovette, and that's what the military tribunal found. The White Sands Missile Range is a highly secure area controlled by the most powerful military in the world. If you do not believe that it was an abduction, then you have to ask what individual or group of individuals would have the means to sneak into a highly restricted area, attack and kill a U.S. airman, and then manage to evade capture without leaving a single shred of evidence of them ever being in the area.
And you're always going to get those because of the time period. Well, it was before the time period, but you're always going to get people speculating about devil worshippers. Like, if devil worshippers wanted to sacrifice somebody, they could choose thousands upon thousands of better people to choose than a freaking military man.
Especially being accompanied.
Bring a world of shit that you don't want on your head.
Yeah, we had somebody and I were talking about somehow. Somebody said about a case in Georgia. Yeah, they had said that it was devil worshippers, and I'm like, there's only been one verified case of a devil worshipper satanic sacrifice ritual, and that was that weird individual down in Texas.
I thought it was in Mexico.
May have been Mexico. I think you're right. It is Mexico.
Yeah.
But that's it. That's it. One. All right. So
that ain't many.
No. In my research, this case led to another case, and we will eventually cover probably a couple of these that I'm going to gloss over tonight. But another case of human mutilation.
We're just going to give up? We done with that one?
No, we'll come back and give our 2 cents about Jonathan Lovette here, but I wanted to give you this one too.
I just want to make sure.
So this one is known as the Brazil incident, and for some unknown reason, Brazil has always been a hotspot for UFO incidents.
Well, I would say maybe it has something to do with the fact that they got a large amount of cattle.
That does help.
I mean, they do. If you don't think they do, you're wrong.
In 1981, the Calares region was plagued by sightings of strange objects in the sky. One of these UFOs was encountered by 2 young boys named Abe Alberto and Havarma Fahara. The object directed a beam of superheated light at the 2 boys. Fahara managed to break free and escape, but Alberto was not so lucky. Fahara led authorities to the scene and explained what happened, and a search of the area found Alberto's body completely drained of blood with no signs of organ failure. If you don't find that weird, this next one will definitely tickle your fancy, because on the afternoon of September 29th, 1988, the sun was shining high in the skies over Sao Paulo, covering the city in a warmth that hinted at the upcoming hot Brazilian summer. South of the city lies the Billings Reservoir. The lake offers residents a breath of relief from the Brazilian hot, humid air, but the reservoir is not as peaceful as it may seem. Many deaths have occurred in and around the lake. At least 1 drowning a year occurs at the reservoir, and it is also used as a dumping ground for the bodies of gangland killings that occur in and along the streets of Sao Paulo. Every once in a while, a body shows up that's not so easily explained. Such a body was discovered on this spring September day. A young boy was walking by himself along the banks of the reservoir holding a sling at his side. He had headed to the lake after school that afternoon with the intention of hunting birds and other small creatures that lived around the reservoir in the long grass and the woodlands. He was surprised when he spotted a large group of vultures on the bank opposite him. They were all gathered around what looked like a large animal carcass. Unsure of what they were feasting on due to the number of vultures feeding, the boy charged the vultures and launched a stone from his sling to disperse the birds. As they left, the boy was shocked to see a badly mutilated corpse of a human. He quickly made his way to the nearest village and nervously told the residents what he had seen. Police were called. A fire truck and 2 officers from the Santo Amaro Police Department arrived on the scene fairly quickly. After a quick assessment, they all agreed that the scene was beyond their expertise, and by late afternoon, the area had been cordoned off and was crawling with police officers and medical personnel. As rumors swirled over the next few hours, and as the villagers talked about the discovery, nothing was reported on the news or in the newspapers/tabloids that evening. The body and the investigators attending the scene quietly disappeared sometime during the night. The next morning, all that remained at the location were discarded strands of police tape and signs that the long grass along the banks of the reservoir had been trampled by authorities. Nothing was heard of this case, and slowly the incident began to fade into memory and local legend. That is how it would have remained if not for a twist of fate 6 years later. In 1994, the coroner's report and the associated photographs were leaked to the press. Simple, mundane reports appeared in various newspapers and publications over the next few weeks. It is theorized that someone, possibly working in government, had found the case so disturbing that they broke their silence and pushed the information out to the public. The details regarding the state in which the body was found are as gruesome as Sergeant Lovette's. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, you have been warned. This one is even worse, if you can imagine. The identity of this individual was determined by dental records and was not widely reported. I'm sure if you wanted to find his name, you could. But according to the autopsy report, this man's eyes had been extracted and his eyelids cut away. The tongue had been removed, the left ear had been sliced off, the lips and flesh around the mandibles and neck had been removed, and a significant piece of the jawbone was missing. Examining the rest of the body, investigators found that the armpits had been punctured by a single hole around 1.5 inches in diameter. Similar holes were found on the legs and arms, where it was discovered that the flesh, including entire muscles, had been extracted. These holes were all uniform in size and the way in which they had been inflicted. In instances where there were 2 holes on opposite sides of the body, such as those located in the armpits and the arms and the legs, they were found to be symmetrically aligned with each other. When the coroner attempted to inspect the state of the victim's internal organs, he was shocked to find that they had been removed. The liver, kidneys, stomach, large and small intestines, along with the pancreas, were all missing. The chest and stomach had shrunk or sunken inward as a result of the missing organs. However, there was no incision in the abdomen besides another 1.5-inch hole where the navel should have been. This left the coroner no choice but to conclude that the organs, along with the muscle tissues, had been sucked out via these holes. An unusual and completely unnatural method of removal. The victim's colon had been cored out, leaving a huge hole where the rectum should have been, and he had also been castrated. With all of this trauma, the coroner found that every single drop of blood had been drained from his body.
It's pretty damn wild.
Yeah, it is. When trying to determine which instruments had been used to inflict such injuries, investigators found that the holes made in the limbs and torso, the extraction of the rectum and scrotum, and the cuts made on the face all had a surgical quality to them. This indicated to the coroner that they had been made with speed and a resounding precision All of the wounds showed a distinct lack of bleeding, either attributed to the fact that the blood was being extracted at the same time the incisions were being made, or because the wounds themselves were cauterized. Rigor mortis had not set in despite the death having occurred more than 24 hours before discovery. Another oddity was that the corpse did not omit the usual corpse-like odors despite the body being covered with vultures when it was first found. There were no signs to indicate that they had fed on the flesh or entrails. The most disturbing aspect of the case, however, was the fact that the toxicology report showed no signs of anesthesia or any accompanying paralyzing agent having been administered at the time these injuries were inflicted. This was extremely odd because there were also no signs of any kind of restraint found anywhere on the victim's body. This led the coroner to conclude that the individual was fully conscious during the entire procedure and must have been paralyzed by some other means. It is unlikely that he was able to move freely due to the immaculate nature of the cuts. During the autopsy, when the cranial cavity was open, the coroner's report listed 2 items. One was an unimpaired skull cap, meaning the cranium was otherwise undamaged, and signs of this is the second one, there were signs of a cerebral edema. The presence of said cerebral edema without associated trauma to the skull is indicative of an agonizing death. The coroner listed the cause of death as, quote, acute hemorrhage and multiple traumatisms. There is also a component or causa mortis by vagus stimulation, end quote. In layman's terms, I had to look that up. This means
I ain't got no clue what the hell you're saying.
That translates to average everyday people speak that the victim died of a cardiorespiratory arrest brought on by extreme pain.
Dang.
The report also states that there was an element of torture with regards to the death of this individual.
Yeah, I'd say so. You die from pain.
You die. It was so excruciatingly painful, you had a brain bleed. Your brain could not possibly take all of that firing, and you had a fucking brain bleed.
That's crazy.
The victim was a 53-year-old man who suffered from both epilepsy and alcoholism. He frequently visited the reservoir to fish and had been reported missing 3 days prior to his body being discovered. Police found his clothes hidden in the woods on the opposite bank, suggesting he had taken them off and had swam 80 meters to the other side, probably for a more productive fishing spot. Family members confirmed that this was a usual habit of his. He had been taking medicine for the epilepsy, and authorities initially believed that he had mixed alcohol with his medication, and that this had resulted in him experiencing a strong reaction, collapsing and dying after a strenuous swim. I giggled because there's no way in hell any of that results in your fucking internal organs being sucked out your navel.
No, I don't think so, but I'm no expert.
No. They believe that his body was then preyed upon by scavengers, such as rats, insects, and vultures, and that his injuries were a combination of decomposition and animal predation post-mortem. However, it was quickly established that this was unlikely due to the other findings in the coroner's report. The victim had not been dead long enough for natural decomposition of the suggested magnitude to have taken place, nor had enough time passed for animals to have eaten the amount of flesh and organs that were missing. Add to this the fact that there were no signs of predation having occurred. There were no bite marks or telltale signs that are usually left by the beaks of said vultures or other carrion birds. All incisions were of an unnatural, however possible, man-made origin. Despite the seemingly overwhelming evidence to suggest that foul play had occurred, investigators quickly closed the case and dismissed it as an unfortunate strategy, stating that the man had, quote, died of natural causes attributed to his illness and lifestyle choices, end quote.
Yeah. Sounds like it.
For this reason, the case is not widely known outside of Brazil. In Brazil, you would find it extremely difficult to find someone who was familiar with the specifics of the case. Authorities have been accused of covering up the wilder details regarding this death, and there is, in fact, evidence to support this claim. The fact that the case only came to light 6 years after the incident via an internal leak speaks volumes about a possible cover-up. Furthermore, in almost every single article regarding this story, the location of the body, where the body was found, is almost always incorrectly reported as Guaraparinga Reservoir. This is not the actual place, and the Guaraparinga Reservoir is a few miles to the east. Geographically speaking, the two reservoirs are close to one another. However, the body was nowhere near Guaraparinga. This has led many researchers to believe that some of the details were incorrectly reported in order to throw the public off the truth. But why do this if it was believed to have been a natural death? Why the secrecy to begin with? Why not put it out there?
It's a good question. Because they don't want people scared of aliens.
Or the reservoir.
That's true, too.
They don't want a Lake Lanier in Brazil. Theories regarding what happened to this unfortunate individual have been all over the place. First of all, if you are trying to look at the case from an unbiased point of view, you have to question the official explanation. The details of the coroner's report when it comes to the presence of a cerebral edema suggest that this man died a very painful death. It is true that people who have epilepsy do not feel any pain during a seizure. There is no denying that the body itself goes through a variety of trauma. A cerebral edema is a rare but possible outcome of a particularly bad seizure. It will cut off the oxygen supply to the brain, which in itself will cause varying degrees of damage, if not outright death. However, the autopsy clearly states that the victim had died from a cardiac arrest, which it is also very rare for an epileptic seizure to cause such complications. But those seizures do increase a sufferer's heart rate considerably during an episode. If violent enough, it could stop the heart. If particular variables regarding the person's lifestyles are met, as we have already learned, this individual was middle-aged and alcoholic. Therefore, it could have compromised the cardiorespiratory system. Under those circumstances, although very unlikely, it is not beyond all possibility that both the cerebral edema and heart failure were brought on by an epileptic seizure. This still leaves
the precision of the removal of the organs. I mean, come on.
That's what I was about to say. That still leaves the question of how having an epileptic seizure and a heart attack would result in 1.5-inch diameter holes symmetrically across the body and your organs being sucked out. Some have speculated, and I would have to say that these some were on the crack rock, that these holes could have been formed by some burrowing animal which preyed upon the body after death and consumed the flesh of the internal organs from within. However, the uniformity of these holes and the fact that they had a surgical quality along with the cauterization of the wounds is absolutely, undeniably unnatural. It is highly unlikely that these cuts were caused by predation or decomposition given the time frame. Could this individual have been murdered, and if so, who could have inflicted such injuries upon another human being? Why would they kill somebody in this way? What was their motive? Murder was ruled out fairly quickly during the investigation due to the lack of evidence suggesting another person's involvement. Remember, there was no indication of restraint or signs of any kind of struggle between the victim and the would-be attacker. There were also no other tracks along other than the victim's at the site where the body was discovered. Authorities also questioned whether it was even possible for another human to have inflicted such injuries unless they were a highly skilled surgeon. Even then, it would have been extremely difficult without some form of anesthetic. Extraction of organs via suction devices is used in some medical procedures, but it's nearly always damaging the organ being removed during the process. So what would have been the purpose of doing this besides a torture aspect? Although it is not impossible, homicide by another human being is perhaps even more unlikely than a death by natural causes. With that in mind, we are either left with the possibility that this was in fact a natural death. No, we're not. Where nearly every single variable somehow aligned in an extremely unlikely way to appear as an extremely unnatural death, or we have ourselves a case of a death that was so unnatural, it begins to enter the realms of the supernatural. There are those who believe that he could have been attacked by an unknown cryptid stalking the woodlands around the reservoir. People from the surrounding villages have reported all sorts of strange happening over the years. It is difficult to attribute the case to local legends when there is little to no evidence to support the existence of a creature that could inflict these injuries. Along with that fact, there seems to have been no other attacks, with this being a one-off. This case has similarities to the plethora of animal mutilations recorded all over the world, and we've already discussed how those mutilations have been attributed to UFO activity and possible experimental extraterrestrial dealings on cattle. When the coroner was shown images of these animal mutilations in the years after the discovery of the body, he was shocked at how similar the incisions were to those found on the body of the man at the reservoir, especially in the way in which the eyes, skin, and skin around the jawbone had been removed. It was a striking resemblance, as were the holes through which the internal organs had been extracted, all indicative of the same method. Could extraterrestrials have abducted this man, subjected him to a rapid and brutal procedure in which he lost his life? We would have to question the motives of those beings and express anxiety and fear over the complete disregard for human life. However, that plays into, are we a prison, a zoo, or a petri dish?
I would say petri dish.
Yeah, me too.
I don't know about a zoo. We're not that interesting.
This man was subjected to the most harrowing experience imaginable. Having his skin peeled from his face, eyes gouged out, tongue removed, organs sucked from his body, blood completely drained, and both his rectum and scrotum cored out, all in the same instance while fully conscious without anesthetic and completely paralyzed. Who or whatever did this clearly had no sympathy or consideration regarding the pain and suffering this man went through. Then they discarded his remains like trash with no apparent attempt to hide his body. Is this how extraterrestrials view the human race? I hope not. This case is over 40 years old, and while authorities consider the investigation closed, it is very much unsolved. There are some aspects of this story that seem unbelievable, but the details are all there in the coroner's report and in photographs, which are widely available to the public. The images are extremely disturbing, but if you are into that sort of thing, all one would have to do would be to enter into the old Google machine, Billings Reservoir Mutilation or Guaraparinga Reservoir Mutilation. And if you are looking, Guaraparinga is Guaraparanga. Because trust me, I had to do a little deciphering of the old word to find out where the hell it was and how to spell it. So all the evidence would suggest that this man and Sergeant Lovette are only two victims in a much larger and sinister scheme, one that has been visited upon mankind for at least the last 80 plus years. Someone or something has an unhealthy interest in the organic life of this planet. They also have the technology and equipment to target and incapacitate test subjects whenever and wherever they choose, all the while lacking the basic compassion or humanity to preserve the lives of their victims. So, in the case of Sergeant Lovette, I think you call a spade a spade. I mean, unfortunately, that is a cattle mutilation, telltale cattle mutilation taken out on a human in both of these instances.
Well, here's the thing about this case: is where did we even hear about it? Who's giving out that information?
Oh,
Because
sir.
everything I saw. Sorry, he's trying again, dude. You about to get. Yeah, you just no. Let's just stop. Anyway, supposedly this case is the 13th file of Project Grudge.
Yes.
Did you see that?
Yes, report 13.
12 out of 14 have been declassified, but this is supposedly the 13th case. And the way this leaked out is through 3 ufologists who somehow wrote books about this subject, somehow claimed that they got to view this highly classified document. And I mean, how did they get a hold of it? How'd they get away with it? I mean,
well,
if you look into the 2 people involved, Lovette and the major, you're not going to find anything on these 2 people existing in the Air Force. You just can't find anything. So, but these 3 guys that are all conspiracy theorists, ufologists, and all that, somehow these 3 guys got a hold of an extremely classified document. Does that hold water? Do you think that's possible?
All right, so playing devil's advocate, if this really truly happened, they would have scrubbed every existence of both Lovette and Cunningham so that there wasn't a paper trail. As for that one guy, Bill English, he is very controversial, but supposedly he's kind of like, what's his name? Area 51 whistleblower, Bob Lazar. He's similar to Bob Lazar. There's enough of a paper trail that leads people to believe that he could have been. He was an analyst, and supposedly this report was given to him for his analysis on whether or not some of the cases in that report were viable.
Right.
Now, he tells the story that at a UFO conference, that before J. Allen Hynek had passed away, he and Hynek were in a room waiting to speak or be part of a round table, and he point blank asked Hynek if he had seen Report 13. He said at first Hynek denied it, and then he said, look, I've read it. Here's what I've seen, and I've seen your initials and your name in the margins. And Hynek told him, said, I will never admit and I will always deny what I'm about to tell you, but yes, I have seen, as you can tell, the incidences in that report. And that English says that, along with some of the other weirder cases of Project Blue Book, is what turned Hynek to believer.
Right.
However, if this is the case, and I've not dealt or dived into the cattle mutilation thing. I know Linda Moulton Howe was her thing back in the 70s. She released that documentary about all the cattle mutilations. My question is, were they just not being reported before the 70s? Were cattle mutilations going on during the 40s and the 50s? And were cattle mutilations happening in the area of White Sands? If that's the case, I don't know. But see, this leads you down the rabbit hole of the underground, the Dulce base thing, where supposedly there's a treaty that they can take cattle and certain people as long as they don't take so many a year. And then the Dulce base levels, gets into the human experiments. And I mean, I don't know, man. I know it takes a leap of faith in believing some of that stuff, but like I said in the episode, if the government came out tomorrow and told me that water was wet, I would go have to take a drink of it first.
Well, I mean, the government has. I mean, last year and the year before, government did come out and say that aliens are real. Even one guy testified in front of Congress that we have captured non-human biologics.
Yeah, but then they fucking Project Blue booked it with that new Arapo, however, whatever acronym you want to say, and that fucker they put in place of it basically come back and said, nope, it's the modern day equivalent of swamp gas.
Whatever.
I know.
You don't testify in front of Congress that they have in their possession non-human biologics and then go back and say it's swamp gas.
Exactly. That's why everybody in the UFO world and on UFO Twitter are pissed at that guy. And the government.
It just goes to show you how fucked up our world has gotten, that when they can come out and say that, and you really didn't hear much about it. Nobody gave a shit. They were like, okay, are they going to pay our rent?
Well, yeah. The other thing I think is it's almost to the point of everybody knows it's true. All we're waiting on is for you to say, yeah, it's true. And then when you do, we're like, yeah, hell, we knew that.
Yeah, pretty much.
I don't know. There's a couple of other stories supposedly in that File 13. I mean, we could probably do a whole episode on File 13, and especially that Bill English guy, because he's very controversial. I don't know, man. I don't know.
I don't know either. I don't know shit.
I don't either.
I barely know how to tie my shoes these days.
Well, that's why you wear Velcro. Gotcha.
You swore you wouldn't tell.
Gotcha with your diabetic Velcro shoes.
I ain't got no damn diabetes yet.
Diabetes. My name's Wilford Brimley, and I want to talk to you about diabetes.
I'm at the age and weight where when you tell somebody that you don't have diabetes, they're like, really? Ain't that something?
Yeah. Yeah, they're almost like...
That's suspicious. That's weird.
However, I do believe your consumption of the yeast, barley, and spirits helps in that matter.
Does it?
I do believe so, sir.
Oh, all right, then good.
You just got to get off that aspartame and them Diet Cokes and them damn zero drinks.
Why, I have you know I'm doing dry January, pal.
It's only, sir, it's only the 5th.
I'm just saying, I'm so far so good. That's all I'm trying to say.
I'm 5 days in, fucker. Well, all right, we've already kind of let the cat out of the bag about the recommendation. So Kings of Tupelo is what we've both decided.
Absolutely.
We would love your theory on these two cases. Also, if you have heard of any other human mutilation cases, we would need the name of the individual or the town in which it occurred, because let me express something to you. The FBI van across the street already has like checked several boxes with me, you know, trying to figure out how much radiation poisoning with our case way back. I do not need to be typing in the Google machine human mutilation cases. It did cross my mind, but I was like, probably not a good idea right here at the first of the year. Close Encounters of the Third Kind is happening at Coach's house.
I know, man. It's like everything's going off. I don't know what's going on.
Dog's humping my leg. Dryer's going off.
It's crazy.
Making Devil's Tower out of mashed potatoes in the living room. Well, Coach, it's back to the old grindstone.
Yep. Starting tomorrow, we're back in school.
Yeah.
It is amazing how fast 2 weeks can go by.
It's amazing how fast from Christmas to now went by.
That's what I'm saying.
Insane. I enjoyed the couple of days before Christmas, like, yeah, man, that's not, and then boom, it's like I blinked and now we're going back, so. But anyway, all right. Well, Coach, you got anything else out there?
You know I don't.
Deuces.